Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse from Lunar Astrology, and in this recording I'm going to be talking about the astrology for January 2020. So we are finally here to this very important month as far as astrology goes. There is a huge amount going on. And the big story of this month is going to be the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So this reading for the month is going to be extended because of that very important movement in the skies. And what I'm going to do, because I'm going to be talking about generally what's going on as well during the month, I will put some timestamps below. So if you've come onto this recording and you want to find out what's going on with Saturn Pluto particularly, then you can just click on the timestamp below that will take you straight to that part of the recording. So January begins with Mars entering Sagittarius. This is on the 3rd of January. And generally speaking, Mars enjoys being in this sign because it's another fire sign. Sagittarius is a fire sign, it's a mutable sign, it's very changeable, excitable, it's a very expansive sign, it's very adventurous. So all of this is applied to our motivation, our will, and our goals. So we're kind of like bounding after our goals. It feels great for those of you that are setting New Year's resolutions, for example, because we're feeling like, yes, I'm going to do this thing this year. We're motivated by our beliefs and ideals. We're kind of wanting to pioneer into new lands, new places, go places we haven't been before. The other side of this is we can also get on a bit of a crusade because Mars is the warrior and Sagittarius is a sign that is connected with religion and higher faith, higher ideals, kind of can be a bit of a know-it-all sign sometimes. So the more challenging side of this is that we can get on our high horses about situations. It's a little bit impulsive, this transit. And sometimes what can happen is that we can get a bit scattered as well, like having too many goals. We start to see things that we want and we chase after that, and then we see something else that we want and we start chasing after that. And the problem is that we don't end up completing anything. We feel a bit restless when Mars is in Sagittarius as well. And occasionally, because Sagittarius is a very optimistic sign, we can set our sights a bit too high and therefore end up feeling frustrated that we've not achieved this massive, great big goal that we said we're going to do in 3 days flat because Mars wants to get everything done yesterday. So that's where we have to just be aware. Don't rush. Deal with that feeling of restlessness. Try to complete one thing at a time rather than chasing after lots and lots of different interests. So we have this in the background, and then on the 8th of January, Jupiter, so the ruler of Sagittarius and therefore the dispositor of Mars, whilst Mars is going through Sagittarius, Jupiter is going to meet up with the South Node. It's a very important movement. What is happening here? The South Node is connected to the past, to what is old karma. It's where we can get stuck. And Jupiter represents our faith and beliefs. It's also associated with development as well. And we get this idea that for development to happen, for things to advance, for us to be able to make a bigger and better world for ourselves and collectively, we do have to let go of some old belief systems, some old mindsets that we're carrying. We do have to let go of old judgments as well with this movement. The Sabian symbol of this conjunction between Jupiter and the South Node is an angel carrying a harp, a really beautiful symbol. It brings up the idea, because it's carrying the harp, a musical instrument, that we are really needing to tune in to the higher powers, whatever you believe that to be personally. We need to tune in so that we start to resonate at the right vibe to be able to deal with what is coming, so that we can let go of all of this old stuff that is unnecessary, because there are other important things that we need to be doing. We then have the lunar eclipse on the 10th of January. This is a lunar eclipse in the sign of Cancer. So, at the lunar eclipse, we are making some kind of important decision. There is a culmination, a conclusion, or even a crisis point. It's possible that this lunar eclipse will trigger whatever the Saturn-Pluto conjunction is bringing, because the moon is going to be opposed to all of those planets over there in Capricorn. It's obviously going to be opposing the sun because it's full moon. It's also going to oppose Mercury, Ceres, Saturn and Pluto. So with the moon being in Cancer, we're thinking about our home and our family and our safety. We want to feel kind of cozy when we're in the sign of Cancer. Cancer is concerned about what is going on in our private lives, who we are behind closed doors. And with all of this opposition from the Capricorn planets, it's almost like we're trying to keep the wolf from the door. We're trying to keep that door shut to all of that stuff that is going on out there, because it feels a bit scary. What's going on in the world feels a bit scary. Maybe we just feel really overwhelmed by our working lives and professional lives and what we have to do out there. And it's becoming a bit of a trial to sort of make decisions on how much time we spend at work, how much time we spend at home, and so on. But we need to feel safe and secure, and yet we've got to deal with the stuff that is out there in the world. The one very helpful aspect that we have with this lunar eclipse is a trine to Neptune. So trines are flowing and generally helpful. Neptune is a planet of spirituality, intuition. It's soft, it's yielding, it's gentle. And so we do have this kind of escape route with Neptune. It sort of says, lean into your spirituality, lean into your faith, focus on what is meaningful in your life, and that will help you to decide what you need to do to make sure that your home life and your family and so on are in the right situation. It'll help you to make some important decisions, to really follow your intuition, to listen to what your soul is saying to you. After the lunar eclipse, we have Uranus stationing direct. This is on the 11th of January, and this is very important because now all of the planets are in direct motion. It really feels like things are speeding up because the planets are moving at quite a rate. There's a sense that we've got this forward momentum, but it's possible it's a bit wobbly around the 11th because of Uranus stationing. The actual station dates themselves do feel somewhat unstable. Uranus itself can be associated with instability. We may find that there are sudden turnarounds around this time. We may find that things are kind of shocking or surprising. Things are changing, a sudden change. Uranus rules kind of curveballs, things that are suddenly thrown at us. without us realizing kind of what's going on. That the reason Uranus does this is it's almost like, are you paying attention? Things need to change. Uranus is very, very focused on progress and advancement. At the moment, Uranus is moving through Taurus. Taurus is all of those things that we thought would never change. Taurus is like, here is the track, we're just going to follow the track and that's it. There's no deviation. But Uranus is the deviant. He's the cosmic deviant. He's the rebel. And so we are being told that we need to go off track. We need to change things. We need new growth in our lives. We can't keep planting the same crops, the same seeds, the same foods in the same piece of land over and over and over again, because it's going to get depleted. And that analogy is like for our lives. If we keep doing the same things over and over and over again, then our lives become boring and uninspiring. And so Uranus says we need to do something different. We need to shake things up. And so we may get a boost of that or a burst of that around the 11th as Uranus starts to move forward. Whilst he's been going retrograde, all of this work has been happening internally. So maybe we've been feeling frustrated, that we kind of want to rebel against what we're doing. It's almost like wanting to run away from it, wanting to change it, wanting to fling it all up in the air and see where it falls. Maybe we've just been feeling an internal pressure that we know that we need to modernize some aspect of our lives. And so as Uranus moves forwards, it's almost like now we need to take that information and start to apply that to our lives so that we can start to modernize, so that we can start to progress. So Uranus stations direct on the 11th, and then we really start to hit this major period of January 2020, and I'm going to say pretty much for the whole year. This is like the biggest thing that is going on. So we reach the 12th of January and we have this string of conjunctions. So I'm just going to read them out. I'm going to make a list below so you can see it there. You don't have to write anything down as I'm speaking. So we've got on the 12th, Mercury conjunct Ceres, Mercury conjunct Saturn, Mercury conjunct Pluto, Saturn conjunct Pluto, and then on the 13th, Pluto conjunct Ceres, Saturn conjunct Ceres, the Sun conjunct Pluto, the Sun conjunct Saturn, Sun conjunct Ceres. So all of these conjunctions. So let's just break this down. Let's break it down so we can start to see what all of this means, because when you read it like that, it's just like, oh my God, there's so much happening here. How do we make sense of this? And Capricorn is a sign that's associated with, kind of being sensible. Saturn's a very sensible planet, the ruler of Capricorn. So Mercury conjunct Ceres, mind, Mercury, Ceres, food, feast or famine, it's nurturing. What are we feeding our minds? What are we feeding our minds? It could be literal. What foods are we taking in? Are those foods feeding us properly so that we can think clearly? We all know that some foods will dull our thinking. A bunch of sweets or a load of carbs, it's going to make us lethargic, whereas good food is going to make the mind feel clearer. But we can also make this more metaphorical and say, what information are you taking in? Is that really feeding your mind? Is it helping you to think? It's possible that we're simply talking Mercury about the planet, Ceres, Earth Mother. She is flourishing, and also she is winter where there is no growth. So we're talking about the Earth, we're talking about the planet. It's a serious conversation because Mercury is conjunct Saturn. So now we're thinking seriously. We've got some serious conversations to happen. Mercury conjunct Pluto. We're speaking Mercury, the truth, Pluto. We're speaking the truth. We're having to really dig down in our conversations, in our thoughts. We're having to think very deeply around this time. And so this then brings us to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction taking place on the 12th of January 2020. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction at 22 degrees of Capricorn will be conjoined with Ceres and Mercury. Also on 22 degrees of Capricorn, the Sun is just one degree away at 21 Capricorn. So we have 5 bodies all focusing, all conjoining, all combining with this Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Now the 22nd degree of Capricorn, where Saturn and Pluto are meeting, is on the Sabian symbol, a soldier receiving 2 awards for bravery in combat. So we can see from the symbol, firstly, we need to be brave. And if we are brave, if we face what we need to face with courage, with resolve, with commitment, then we will be rewarded for that. That's what it's telling us. It's showing us that we do need to stand up and be counted around this time. When looking at such an important configuration as this, it can be very helpful to go back in time to see what happened the last time this aspect occurred. So if we go back in time to when Saturn was conjunct Pluto, we can go right back to 1914, for example. What happened in 1914? The First World War began. So it's kind of interesting that we have this soldier Sabian symbol, and we have a reference to war in one of the previous conjunctions with Saturn and Pluto. In 1947, this was just after the Second World War. It was the beginning of the Cold War. It was also the time when the CIA was founded. There were the worst snowfalls in the UK in the 20th century, apparently, and it was also extremely cold in the US around that time, which is interesting because Saturn is a planet associated with the cold. It was also the time when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, which was of huge significance, and Saturn can be associated with history because it rules things like traditions. We have this idea of things being unearthed, secrets, Pluto's secrets being unearthed. So the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls certainly feels very resonant with a Saturn conjunct Pluto in 1947. There was also the Roswell incident. Now, obviously, people have different ideas about what this might have been, but it's a story that has resonated through time. There's still questions about it if you don't know what it is. It was the crashing, the so-called crashing of a UFO in Roswell, New Mexico, and apparently there were alien bodies found on board. And there's a huge big conspiracy around, were they found, were they not, what was the truth? We don't know what the truth is, but the legends still live on. Something else that I thought was extremely important as well is that also in 1947, when Saturn and Pluto met up with one another, this was the time that the Doomsday Clock came into being. So the Doomsday Clock represents the likelihood of a human-made catastrophe. Back in 1947, when it began, the clock was set at 7 minutes to midnight to represent the idea that at midnight that would be the catastrophe and we're only 7 minutes away. In 2018, the clock was moved to 2 minutes to midnight. In 1982, that was the next time that Saturn and Pluto met up together. At this time, the Falklands War began. It was also the time of the first computer virus called the elk cloner. There was also severe cold in the US around the April period. E.T., the extraterrestrial, was released. I thought it was interesting with the Roswell connection. And there was a very brief but very severe recession in the US. Something else that caught my eye, thinking of the doomsday clock, is that 1982 was the year that Michael Jackson released his Thriller album. Now that video, the famous video, wasn't released until the following year, but it was the title track of that album. What is the first line of that song? I imagine many of you will know the song, the Thriller song. The first line is, "It's close to midnight." It's close to midnight. In fact, we have Vincent Price in the first part of that song saying, "Darkness falls across the land, the midnight hour is close to hand." So we know that there is something about kind of like a ticking clock with Pluto conjunct Saturn. I had a little look at some of the films that are going to be released in 2020, because film, songs, all of that kind of thing, the arts, can sometimes channel the energies of the planets. We can see echoes of the planetary patterns coming through the arts and the films that are being released. Things that are coming up. Godzilla versus Kong. I thought this was brilliant. This is such a wonderful analogy for Saturn meeting Pluto. Godzilla versus Kong. We've also got a film called No Time to Die, Black Widow, Eternals, Ghostbusters 2020. Gotta see that. And there's also a film called Antebellum. Now, I didn't know what antebellum meant, so I had to look it up. And the word means occurring or existing before a particular war. So there does seem to be a lot of references to war, conflict, difficulty, hardship, strange occurrences, and the sense that we are close to something that is perhaps quite difficult. Now I'm going to talk more about the symbolism of Pluto and Saturn. And what I want to say to you is that these two planets, they are quite heavy. And so naturally then, we may find that this is quite a heavy period, kind of collectively. In our own personal lives, we can't all sort of expect, oh my God, there's going to be some great catastrophe that's going to happen to me. It's more about we're being pushed to make some kind of change on a personal level. But collectively, I do think there are some quite serious issues that are coming up from this particular conjunction. And I think it's important that we don't gloss over them. Just because we are in these very important times now where we need to be paying attention to what is happening, because what we do now is going to have a huge impact on future generations, and that is why it is so important for us to pay attention to what is going on at the moment. So Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008, and so that has been talking about this deconstruction. Capricorn is all of the structures, all of the establishment, all of the traditions, and Pluto comes in and starts smashing it to pieces. Saturn came into Capricorn. The ruler of Capricorn, of course, came into this sign in December 2017, and Saturn has been trying to start some kind of reconstruction. So we got this idea that Pluto is raising everything to the ground, and then Saturn is coming along and going, right, now we need to start to rebuild again. Pluto rules excretion. Saturn rules reality. And if you excuse my turn of phrase, Saturn conjunct Pluto, the shit just got real. That is what this transit is about. Saturn is Lord of Karma. Pluto is about death and resurrection. There's something here about a deadline. Saturn is old Father Time. He rules time. There is a sense that time has run out. For quite some time, I have been talking about Saturn conjunct Pluto as being the aspect that particularly speaks of the climate emergency, the climate crisis, Time has run out. My belief, my sense is that this conjunction and January 2020 mark a point in time in history that will be a turning point. It's either now or never, do or die. We've got to take responsibility. Saturn for our rubbish, Pluto. We've got to clean up the crap. We've got to grow up. We've got to deal with all of this kind of crumbling of structures. We've got these rotting structures that are going on right now. When we think of Brexit, we've got all of these kind of rotting agreements between us and Europe. Trade agreements are disappearing. There's a lot of animosity between world leaders. We had those images the other week of conversations that were recorded when all the leaders were meeting with the NATO meeting. And they were kind of backbiting and bitching about one another. So we've got really tense international relations going on. We've got corporate abuse of the system. We've got people, huge companies avoiding taxes and so on. While Saturn and Pluto being in Capricorn, we've also had increased fascism. There's a lot of corruption. There's tyranny. We get all of this stuff that's been going on. It's like our shadow has been showing, and I know I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying it. Our shadow is showing, and we've now got to take responsibility for our collective shadow. My sense is as well that because we've got this time has run out, get real, get to the truth with Saturn conjunct Pluto. I think we're also starting to see this on the world stage as well. Think of Trump's impeachment. Think of Prince Andrew in the UK, who has been embroiled in this very unsavoury story with the abuse of underage girls and having sex with underage girls. The Queen has actually got this Saturn-Pluto conjunction happening on her ascendant. Right on her ascendant. So we can definitely see that there is some kind of shift going on with the monarchy, with the royalty in the UK, and that is huge. It's almost unheard of. The fact that Prince Andrew may be called to go to court, again, something that is utterly unheard of, but it's like Saturn and Pluto are saying no more corruption. Let's get real, get to the truth. There are other things happening that we must address. The planet is falling apart. It's a grave time. It's a time of harsh truths. Harsh truths. Some truths are hard to take during this period, but it's absolutely essential that we face them, like the soldier who has faced war and is now getting a reward for that in the Sabian symbol. It's absolutely essential that we face our fears. This is a time where we can't kind of cheat fate. We can't we can't cheat fate. We can't cheat death. We can't try to outmaneuver life. So it's hard, it's difficult, but there are also rewards for facing up to what we need to face. Individually, we need to be dealing with our shadow, our own personal demons. We need to look them right in the eye. This is a massive test of integrity, and it's also a massive rite of passage. So whatever is going on out there in the world, collectively, there are echoes of that is going on within ourselves. So if we feel, and I imagine we're likely to feel quite helpless in some ways with what is going on in the world stage, we can own our authority, we can find our power, we can step into our power by dealing with our own personal stuff, our own personal demons. And that is going to ripple out, that energy, that transformation of energy. We're all going through this kind of rebirth because it's Pluto. Pluto is like the phoenix being destroyed in the ashes and then being reborn. So we're all going through our phoenix and flame moment as well. Again, the rite of passage. And yes, it's difficult. But at the same time, if we show maturity, if we are honest with ourselves and with others, if we take our time, then we can get through this period and we can be much, much stronger for it. So, this is what's going on with Saturn conjunct Pluto. Not easy, but also something that can be incredibly rewarding and powerful to go through and utterly transformative. If we go back to the transits that are occurring, which will just give us a little bit more information, with Pluto conjunct Ceres and Saturn conjunct Ceres. I mean, this is where we get the echoes of really needing to be responsible, Saturn, for the planet Ceres. Pluto and Ceres have a difficult relationship to one another in mythology because it was Pluto who abducted Ceres' daughter, took her to the underworld, but he made her his queen eventually. And Ceres eventually got her daughter back. There was an agreement that Proserpina would return to the earth for a kind of spring and summer, and then would go back to Hades for autumn and winter. So, you know, things worked out in the end for Ceres, but at the moment when Ceres is meeting Pluto in January, it might feel like that horrific moment when we feel like something important is being stripped away from us and we're never going to see it again, and we're never going to recover. And, you know, it feels very extreme. We do need to guard against, in our own personal lives, we do need to guard against thinking in extremes or very black and white thinking. Yes, it is a kind of do or die time. Yes, we do need to be clear about what we need to do. But at the same time, we do need to watch the extreme reactions, especially with that lunar eclipse, the lunar eclipse being in Cancer. Remember before I was saying sometimes it's going to feel a bit like there's the wolf at the door. And so what can happen is that we can react in such an extreme way that it kind of throws everything out of balance. So just watch your reactions around this time. Sun conjunct Pluto is the sort of personal transformation, the power that we have. This is going to be a time when we really start to get to grips with what is in our control and what isn't. And then with the Sun conjunct Saturn, that's where we step into our authority and our maturity. We need to approach things maturely around this time. So if we're getting triggered, if people are pressing our buttons, we need to be able to respond in a mature way. It's no good kind of running around sort of screaming at everybody. Even if we start to feel like that, we need to find some ways to siphon off some of that kind of energy, ground ourselves, because of course it's Capricorn, ground ourselves, do what needs to be done, take responsibility. Sun conjunct Ceres is also remembering to nurture ourselves. We need to nurture ourselves through the process, to mother ourselves through the process. This is like a big initiation. You know, it's like a collective initiation, and we can also see a kind of initiation personally. Also on the 13th of January, kind of almost a bit lost in the midst of all of this huge Capricorn action, Venus will then enter Pisces. So Venus moves into Pisces, and we start to really move into a period where we're feeling much more empathy. Venus in Pisces is very much about unconditional love. So Pisces is the unconditional, unlimited. It's a very charitable sign. So maybe with all of this stuff that is going on, we get a prompt to really be generous, with our hearts. We feel more charitable. Maybe we just want to help. So there's a prompt to be helpful, a prompt to keep our hearts open, a prompt to stay faithful and to sort of recognize that we're all in this together. Pisces is the invisible thread that connects us all. Mercury and then the Sun move into Aquarius. So Mercury moves into Aquarius on the 16th of January, and then the Sun enters Aquarius on the 20th of January, and then we've got a new moon in Aquarius on the 24th of January. So now we get this injection of Aquarian energy. Aquarius is associated with groups and networks, the social connections that we have, society. It's also connected with politics as well. And it's also connected with higher understanding, higher learning, higher intellect. So we move from this very, very, very heavy, earthy energy. We start to move into this more airy, intellectual energy. There's still going to be all of the Earth's energy working in the background because Saturn conjunct Pluto, that's moving very slowly. So we can't expect it suddenly to lift by the end of the months. It's going to be there all months, and it's going to be hanging into February as well. But we do get a shift of energy towards the end of January, where we just start to get a bit of air, like we can take a breath now because we've got the clean Aquarius air. We need to be more objective with Mercury moving into Aquarius. With the Sun entering Aquarius, we also need to be aware of where we perhaps need to create some space, and also thinking about our own unique skills. What is unique about you? What is it that you can do, or that you think of that no one else thinks of? How can you celebrate your individuality? It's important. So then on the 24th of January, this is the date of the new moon in Aquarius. And it feels like we've just been through all of this very hard stuff with all of the conjunction between Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, which is still there echoing in the background. And now we've got to make some kind of change. Maybe we need to join together for some kind of big humanitarian effort. Humanitarian comes from Aquarius, because Aquarius is associated with groups and networks and society and politics and getting together. It's higher learning, higher mind. We need to pull together. We need to make some kind of new start. And it is revolutionary in some way. It's progressive. We need to make some kind of progressive new start around this new moon. But it is a bit tense because it's square to Uranus. So maybe it's because of instability that we're having to make a new start. Maybe it's because security is unstable in some way or affected in some way. We feel insecure, and therefore it's important for us to do something to change things. There is some kind of awakening and awareness with Uranus square to that new moon. Again, it's uncomfortable because it is a square, but it's prompting, it's pushing us to set the foundation for some kind of new start. And there is potential for healing because the new moon is also sextile to Chiron. And Chiron, I have noticed, is a planet that very much connects with environmental issues. So again, I do feel as though there are a lot of stories throughout all of this that are connected with what is going on with the climate crisis and so on. But on a personal level, we are being asked to figure out what is it that needs to be changed. Where are we resisting change? Because Saturn and Pluto as well talk a lot about what we have resisted. And you can bet your bottom dollar, if you have been resisting something in your life, Saturn conjunct Pluto will pretty much say, we can't resist this anymore. We have to deal with whatever is going on. We've got to face up to it. And once we do that, then once we get to this new moon in Aquarius, we get this breath of fresh air. Yes, it shakes things up. Yes, we might feel things are a little bit unstable, but at the same time, we see the opportunity for healing because of that connection, the sextile to Chiron. From there, Venus then conjoins Neptune on the 27th of January. And this is beautiful. It's like a swelling of generosity. Again, it's like heart outpouring. It's very soft and it's very sensitive. So we might feel quite emotional around the end of January. But we can also put that to good use. We can really feel our way through. Feel your way forwards, especially as Mars will also square Neptune. This is on the 28th of January. So Venus conjunct Neptune, 27th of January. Mars square Neptune on the 28th of January. And with these kinds of aspects, I mean, it's very beautiful. It can be very romantic. It's wonderfully creative and imaginative. It's perfect for people who are really into sort of creative practices, wonderful artistic aspects that we've got here. But at the same time, sometimes Mars square Neptune can err on the side of, I want to give up, I don't know what to do, I feel helpless, there's just too much going on, I just want to get lost in a bottle of vodka or Netflix, or I just want to stick my head in the sand and pretend it's all not happening. But remember, Saturn conjunct Pluto is not really going to let us do that. So how can we put this to the high side? How can we work with this to the high side? Mars square Neptune in particular is saying it's important now to use your intuition, Neptune, your soul, to be in tune. Remember, right back at the beginning, Jupiter conjunct the South Node on that angel playing a harp. This is why we need to be tuning in right at the beginning of January, so that by the end of the month, if we are feeling a bit kind of battered and bruised and just like, oh my God, there's so much going on in the world or maybe in our own lives, whatever's happening, if we are starting to feel this weariness with Mars square to Neptune, then all we need to do is tune into your soul, ask your soul, what is it that I need to do? Ask your intuition, meditate, listen to music, spend some time with yourself, spend some time with someone that you love. Focus on the things that you love and you will find your direction. This concludes my reading for January 2020. I hope you found it helpful and I wish you many blessings on your path.